President Biden's approval rating dropping to 38% in January. Many Americans unhappy with his job performance going into the next election. But there's a bigger question. Are his supporters in 2020 changing sides?
By a show of hands, how many of you voted for Joe Biden in 2020? Please raise your hands. Give me hands up. How many of you are right now planning to vote for Joe Biden in 2024?
Joining us right now ahead of that election and the head of the focus group that we just saw there, Frank Luntz, FIL Inc, pollster and political strategist. Good morning to you, Frank. Help us understand what's happening here. I think what you're getting at with particularly this focus group is just what might be described as an enthusiasm gap, but that could become a demonstrable problem for the president. What did these people who are not raising their hands say to you?
Well, it was specifically a group of ex-Biden voters, and that was only to prove to viewers that we had the 19 people who had voted for him and aren't. Number one, it's not just about inflation. It's now about immigration and all the consequences of what's happening at the border. They're angry about it, and they're nervous about it. Number two, they do not hate Joe Biden. There's no negativity. It's more like disappointment. It's the number one word that they use to describe him. And number three, there's no embracement of Donald Trump, but a feeling that Joe Biden is just too old. They are not voting about the past. They are voting about the future. And they're questioning whether or not President Biden has a plan, has the action, has the emotion and passion to carry the country forward.
So, Frank,
it's a warning.
The thing that I can't understand or tell from that focus group, and maybe you can describe it, is those folks who are disenchanted with the president or disillusioned or don't have the enthusiasm that they might have had for him before. When the question gets asked, are you voting for Trump? You're saying they're not. Are they effectively saying, OK, then I'm going to go, I'm not going to vote at all? Is that, and what happens there?
So these people, when you ask them that specific Trump question, 11 of them return to Joe Biden. So the point that you raised is a good one. If it's Donald Trump as the opponent, which it will be, then many of those people return. But if you give them a third party, a third option, or even throw in Bobby Kennedy, they go to anywhere but Joe Biden. And this is key. In that polling that you've been running, African Americans under age 40, male African Americans, are moving further and further towards Donald Trump, not the Republican Party, but towards Trump. The Latino vote, the most critical vote in America, roughly 20% of the population. For the first time, polling now has them supporting Donald Trump. Make no mistake, young voters at this point have left the current president because they don't think he has the energy. So this helps explain why they're moving away. We went through this in 2016. We watched Hillary Clinton zoom in the polls early on and then collapse at the end. So this is no guarantee of what happens in October and November. But, Andrew, make no mistake, Joe Biden is the weakest incumbent in America since Jimmy Carter in 1980. And don't forget, on the Thursday before the election, Carter was dead even with Ronald Reagan. After their one debate, Reagan beat Jimmy Carter by 9 points. This is a look into the future.
Frank, I don't know that this gets much comment, but this must be the first election, assuming it is Trump versus Biden, where either winner would be a lame duck immediately. In other words, there's no possibility of a further term beyond that. Does that come into it at all? I mean, it just seems like it's another kind of short-term thing. It doesn't really leave room for, we're going to have a new grand 8-year strategy, anything like that. It really just seems like, moving the ball ahead a very short distance.
Well, they're more focused on both candidates being of advanced age. Now, Donald Trump does not suffer from the same passion deficit of Joe Biden. But the real issue for the voter is what will happen in year 2, year 3, year 4. They're not looking 8 years ahead. They're simply looking 4 years ahead. And they want a plan of action. And frankly, they're questioning Donald Trump's plan of action, but they believe that Joe Biden has none. And to return those voters that he needs so desperately, he's got to show energy, enthusiasm, some details about what he's going to do, not what he's done. This election will be about the next 4 years, not the past 4 years.
So, Frank, is there a third-party candidate that could emerge that will attract not only the people who are dissatisfied with Biden, but also those who are dissatisfied with Trump? Or is a third-party candidate simply going to draw the votes away from one and make the other win?
That is the question that people are asking right now. And the third-party candidate, I believe, according to our polling, starts with 20%. That's the number that Ross Perot ended with in 1992, the most successful third-party candidate since Teddy Roosevelt in 1912. The issue is, can they go from that 20% to be truly competitive? There is nothing that shows a ceiling right now. But let's face it, we've got 250 years of third-party candidates not doing well.
So, Frank, here's the thing that I can't figure out is, are you suggesting, and you've been associated as being considered and people have described you as a Republican pollster. I don't know if you take issue with that or not, but nonetheless, do you look at this and say to yourself that the Biden administration is supposed to look at this and say that they're going to stand down and put somebody else in that place? That does not seem to be realistic. They have to pray and hope that Trump is the candidate, which you're saying that's going to be the case, and then it's some kind of strange game of chicken, which it seems to be. I mean, what are you suggesting here?
Well, Andrew, the reason why I came into the studio rather than doing it at home, the reason why I put on this monkey suit, is because I have never been more serious in my life. And I've had conversations with you and other journalists over the last few weeks. The weakest candidate against Donald Trump is Joe Biden. Any other Democrat would run further ahead. Any other Democrat would be beating Donald Trump right now. Joe Biden is falling further and further behind. Inflation is dropping as an issue. Crime is falling in most places, although there have been some issues over the last few weeks. Yes, immigration is a problem, but the quality of life is improving, and yet his numbers are getting worse. Trump has been indicted 91 times, and yet his numbers are going up. Why? Because the public is coming to a conclusion that Joe Biden cannot take this country forward, and he seems to be ignoring that conclusion, is determined to run. And frankly, for you viewers right there, if this continues, Donald Trump is the next president.